What happens when a locked door leads you to the man who could change your life forever? Meet Rachel Bennett, a 25-year-old designer at Starlight Designs, a top fashion company in San Francisco. She's got big dreams, a sharp mind, and a heart full of grit, but her coworkers don't always see it that way. Rachel's the kind of person who stays late, sketching ideas that go beyond her job description, only to be told she's reaching too far. It's tough when your passion feels like a target on your back. Picture this. It's a chilly evening in 2025, and Rachel's day is already a mess. Her boss piles on extra work, her desk is a chaos of fabric swatches, and now she's trudging home, hoping for a quiet night. But fate has other plans. When she gets to her upscale Mission District apartment, the electronic locks are down, a glitch from some fancy system upgrade. No key, no way in, and the thought of crashing in the lobby feels like admitting defeat. Rachel's not one to give up, though. She remembers a neighbor, a guy she's seen once or twice in the parking garage, always in a sharp suit, always in a hurry. Desperate, she knocks on his door, half expecting to be turned away. That's when she meets Daniel Foster, a man who's about to flip her world upside down. One knock sparks a journey of love, betrayal, and redemption, where locked doors lead to open hearts. Will Rachel find her place in a world that keeps pushing her out? Can a stranger become her safe haven? This is a story that'll make you laugh, cry, and believe in second chances. Get ready for a roller coaster of emotions, because Rachel's tale is just beginning, and trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment. Rachel Bennett sat at her desk in the buzzing office of Starlight Designs, surrounded by mood boards and fabric samples. The San Francisco skyline sparkled through the glass walls, but her focus was on the sketch in front of her, a bold dress design she'd stayed up all night to perfect. She wasn't just a junior designer, she wanted to prove she could think bigger. As she added a final flourish, a sharp voice cut through her thoughts. Margaret Hayes, her manager, loomed over her desk, arms crossed. "Rachel, your job is to follow my instructions, not to play artist with projects that aren't yours. Have you even finished the sales report I asked for?" Rachel's cheeks burned. "I finished it, Margaret. I just thought this design could help with the spring collection." Margaret scoffed. "Ambition doesn't pay your salary. Keep this up and I'll have to rethink your place here." Across the room, Isabel Ward, another designer, smirked. "Nice try, Rachel. Stick to coffee runs next time." The words stung, but Rachel bit her lip and turned back to her sketch. She'd graduated top of her class from a prestigious design school, yet here she was, fighting for scraps of respect. By 6 o'clock, the office emptied out, leaving Rachel alone with her thoughts. She packed her bag, her mind replaying Margaret's warning. As she stepped into the cool evening air, her phone buzzed with an email from the apartment management. "Due to a system upgrade, the electronic locks in your building are temporarily offline. Repairs begin tomorrow. Please make alternate arrangements for tonight." Rachel stopped dead on the sidewalk. Alternate arrangements? She checked her keychain, hoping for a miracle, but no luck. Her spare key was inside her locked apartment. The idea of sleeping in the lobby felt pathetic, and a hotel was out of the question. Her paycheck barely covered rent in the pricey Mission District. She scrolled through her contacts, but her few friends lived across the city, and crashing with them meant a long bus ride she didn't have the energy for. Rachel trudged to her building, a sleek high-rise with a now useless keycard scanner. The lobby was empty, the security guard shrugging when she asked for help. It's just one night, she told herself, but the weight of the day pressed harder. Then she remembered him, the neighbor from 12B. She'd seen him a few times in the parking garage, always in a tailored suit, carrying a leather briefcase. He'd nodded once when she held the elevator, his eyes sharp but not unkind. Maybe he'd let her crash on his couch. It was a long shot, but Rachel was out of options. She took the elevator to the 12th floor, her heart pounding as she stood outside 12B. The door was dark wood, polished, with a faint glow of light underneath. She knocked, half hoping no one would answer. Footsteps approached, and the door swung open. There he was, Daniel Foster. In a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up, looking like he'd just stepped out of a meeting. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and his green eyes narrowed as he took her in. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice low and guarded. Rachel swallowed. "Hi, I'm Rachel, from 12A. I know we've only met in passing, but the building's locks are down and I can't get into my place. Could I maybe stay here tonight? I'll pay you for the trouble and I can help with chores or whatever you need." Daniel leaned against the door frame, studying her. "You're asking to crash at a stranger's place? That's bold." Rachel's face heated. "I'm not a stranger, exactly. We've seen each other around. I'm desperate, okay? I won't be any trouble." He raised an eyebrow, then stepped aside. "Fine. One night. But you're cooking dinner, deal?" Rachel nodded, relief flooding her. "Deal." She followed him inside, struck by how sleek his apartment was, all glass and steel with a view of the city lights. It screamed money, but she pushed the thought aside. Daniel handed her an apron and pointed to the kitchen. "I'm starving, and I'm not eating takeout again. Make something edible." Rachel laughed nervously. "No pressure, right?" She rummaged through his fridge, finding eggs, bread, and some vegetables. Cooking wasn't her strength, but she'd try. As she cracked eggs into a pan, the oil sizzled too loudly and smoke curled up. "Oh no," she muttered, waving a dish towel. Daniel appeared, smirking. "You planning to burn my kitchen down?" Rachel groaned. "It's under control. Sort of." He grabbed a spatula and flipped the eggs with ease. "Maybe stick to chopping for now." They sat at his counter with slightly scorched omelets, the tension easing. Rachel's hands were still sticky with egg yolk, and she glanced around, embarrassed. "Mind if I wash up?" she asked. Daniel nodded, pointing down the hall. "Bathroom, second door on the left. Don't get lost." Rachel smiled, grabbing her bag, and headed off. The apartment was bigger than she'd realized, with polished floors and modern art on the walls. She reached the hall, counting doors, but in her flustered state she misjudged. She opened what she thought was the bathroom, only to freeze. Steam billowed out, and there was Daniel, mid-shower, standing behind a frosted glass door. He hadn't heard her over the water, but his silhouette was clear enough to make her heart skip. "Oh my gosh," she gasped, slamming the door shut, her face burning. "Wrong." Rachel bolted back to the kitchen, mortified, and busied herself with dishes, hoping he hadn't noticed. Minutes later, Daniel strolled in, towel drying his hair, now in a fresh shirt. His smirk told her he knew. "Take a wrong turn?" he asked, eyes twinkling. Rachel buried her face in her hands. "I'm so sorry, I thought it was the bathroom. I didn't see anything, I swear." He laughed, a warm sound that eased her panic. "Relax, Rachel. You're not the first to get lost in here. Let's just eat before you set off any more alarms." She peeked through her fingers, relieved he wasn't mad. "You're way too calm about this," she muttered. Daniel shrugged. "Life's too short to sweat the small stuff. Now, tell me about your day. Those omelets aren't distracting me." They settled back at the counter, and Rachel opened up, the shower mishap fading into a shared chuckle. "I'm a designer at Starlight Designs, but my boss thinks I'm overstepping," she said. Today she basically said, "I'm on thin ice." Daniel listened, his gaze thoughtful. "Sounds like she's threatened by you. Keep doing your thing. People like that hate it when you don't quit." Rachel blinked, surprised by his insight. "Thanks. That's actually helpful." As they cleaned up, her phone buzzed with an email from Margaret. "Rachel, I need the revised sketches by 8 a.m. tomorrow. No excuses." She groaned, rubbing her temples. Daniel glanced over. "Rough day?" "Rough life," she muttered. He pointed to a guest room down the hall. "Get some rest. You look like you need it." Rachel smiled faintly, her mind still spinning from the day, and now the image of Daniel's blurry silhouette. She had no idea this was just the start of something much bigger. Rachel woke to the smell of coffee drifting through Daniel's apartment. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow over the San Francisco skyline. She stretched, still in yesterday's clothes, and checked her phone. An email from the building management sat in her inbox. "Lock repairs delayed. System won't be fixed for at least 2 more days." Rachel sighed. 2 days. She couldn't afford a hotel, and imposing on Daniel longer felt like pushing her luck. But what choice did she have? She padded to the kitchen where Daniel was pouring coffee, his dark hair still damp from a shower. He glanced up, unfazed. "Sleep okay?" he asked. Rachel nodded. "Yeah, thanks. I just got bad news, though. Locks are still down. I can find somewhere else if it's too much trouble." Daniel handed her a mug. "You're already here. Stay till it's fixed. Just don't burn my kitchen again." She laughed, relaxing a bit. "No promises, but I'll try." Determined to pull her weight, Rachel offered to cook dinner again. Daniel raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She scanned his pantry, settling on grilled cheese sandwiches, something she couldn't mess up too badly. As she melted butter in a pan, Daniel leaned against the counter, watching. "You're serious about this cooking thing, huh?" he said. Rachel grinned. "Gotta earn my keep. Plus, I'm not letting those eggs define me." The sandwiches turned out golden, if a little uneven, and they ate at his dining table, the city lights twinkling outside. "So," Daniel said, "you mentioned your boss yesterday. What's her deal?" Rachel hesitated, then opened up. "Margaret's tough. I pitched a new design and she acted like I was stepping on her toes. Then there's Isabel, who's always waiting for me to fail. It's like they see my ideas as a threat." Daniel listened, his green eyes steady. "Sounds like you're surrounded by people scared of your potential. Keep pushing. They'll either adapt or break." His words hit her hard, a mix of blunt and kind that made her feel seen. The next day, Rachel headed to Starlight Designs, her revised sketches tucked under her arm. The office hummed with chatter, but it quieted when she walked in. Isabel was at her desk, smirking over a coffee cup. "Nice of you to show up, Rachel. Hope those sketches aren't recycled from someone else's work." Rachel ignored her, setting her portfolio on Margaret's desk. Margaret barely looked up. "These better be good, Rachel. I don't have time for amateurs." The words stung, but Rachel held her ground. "They're original, and they're ready for the client meeting." Margaret waved her off, but Rachel caught a flicker of unease in her eyes. Back at her desk, she worked through lunch, tweaking designs until her vision blurred. By evening, she was exhausted but determined to prove herself. When she got back to Daniel's place, he was on a call, his tone sharp. "Tell them we're not budging on the deadline. I want updates by tomorrow." He hung up, noticing Rachel. "Rough day?" he asked. She slumped onto the couch. "You could say that. Work's a battlefield, and I'm running low on armor." Daniel sat beside her, a rare softness in his expression. "You're tougher than you think. Don't let them dull your spark." Rachel smiled faintly. "You sound like you've fought a few battles yourself." He shrugged, dodging the hint. "Let's just say, I know what it's like to be underestimated." That night, Rachel needed a break. She suggested grabbing drinks at a cozy coffee shop nearby, one with string lights and wooden tables. Daniel agreed, and they walked through the Mission District, the air crisp with fall. At the shop, Rachel ordered a spiked latte, joking she needed liquid courage to survive work. One drink turned to 2, then 3, and soon she was tipsy, her guard down. Daniel, sipping a black coffee, watched her with amusement. "You're chatty when you're buzzed," he said. Rachel giggled, leaning closer. "Maybe I just like talking to you. You're not as scary as you pretend." Her words slurred, and before she could stop herself, she leaned in, aiming for a kiss. Daniel caught her shoulders gently, pulling back. "Rachel, you're drunk. Let's get you home." Her face burned with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean—" He shook his head, his voice soft. "It's okay, I just want us to be real with each other, not rushed by a bad latte." Back at his apartment, Daniel handed her water and a blanket. "Get some sleep. We'll laugh about this tomorrow." Rachel nodded, mortified but grateful for his kindness. The next morning, she woke with a headache and a fuzzy memory of the night. Daniel was in the kitchen, making toast, acting like nothing happened. She mumbled an apology, but he waved it off. "You're fine, Rachel. Just don't make a habit of kissing strangers." She laughed, tension easing. "Noted. Thanks for not making it weird." They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, and Rachel felt something shift, a quiet trust growing between them. At work, things got worse. Isabel cornered her in the break room, holding a design that looked eerily like Rachel's. I found this in the shared drive, Rachel. Funny how it matches your pitch. Did you think no one would notice you stole it? Rachel's stomach dropped. That's my work, Isabel. I created it last month. Isabel smirked. Prove it. Margaret wants a full rewrite by tomorrow, or you're out. Rachel felt the walls closing in, but she thought of Daniel's words. Keep pushing. She spent the night at his place, working on her laptop, determined to fight back. Daniel peeked over, curious. What's got you so focused? She sighed. My coworker's trying to sabotage me. I need to redo everything to save my job. He nodded, thoughtful. You'll nail it. Show them who you are. The next evening, needing air, Daniel suggested a walk through a nearby park, its paths lined with eucalyptus trees. As they strolled, Rachel opened up more. My dad built a company from nothing, she said. When he died, my mom fell apart, and now she's in a coma. My stepdad and his daughter took everything, kicked me out. I've been rebuilding ever since. Daniel listened, his face unreadable. That's heavy, Rachel, but you're still standing. That's not nothing. She looked at him, curious. What about you? What's your story? He hesitated, then said, Just a guy trying to do right by the people who matter. His phone buzzed, another work call, and he stepped away, leaving Rachel wondering what he wasn't saying. Back at the apartment, she fell asleep on the couch, her laptop open, feeling safer than she had in years, even if she didn't know why. Rachel Bennett stood in the elevator of Starlight Designs, clutching her redesigned portfolio like a lifeline. The San Francisco morning buzzed outside, but inside the glass-walled office, tension hung heavy. She'd spent the night at Daniel Foster's apartment, pouring her heart into new sketches to counter Isabel Ward's accusations. Her co-workers' claim that Rachel stole a design had shaken her, but Daniel's quiet confidence kept her grounded. You'll nail it, he'd said, and she clung to those words now. As the elevator dinged, she stepped into the open plan office, where Isabel was already whispering to Margaret Hayes, their manager. Rachel caught snippets of their conversation, words like unprofessional and dishonest. Her stomach twisted, but she squared her shoulders and approached Margaret's desk. I've got the revised designs, she said, her voice steady. Margaret barely glanced at the portfolio. This better be worth my time, Rachel. We don't tolerate shortcuts here. Isabel smirked from her desk, twirling a pen. Good luck explaining why your work looks so familiar, Rachel. Before Rachel could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Got a work thing tonight. Join me? It's at a restaurant in Embarcadero. She hesitated, unsure why he'd invite her to a professional event, but the idea of escaping the office drama was tempting. She texted back, Sure, sounds fun. The day dragged on, with Margaret piling on extra tasks and Isabel dropping snide comments. By 5, Rachel was drained but determined to hold her own. She rushed back to Daniel's place to change, borrowing a simple black dress from her bag of spare clothes. Daniel was waiting in the living room, dressed in a tailored suit that made her pause. You clean up nice, she said, half joking. He grinned. You're not so bad yourself. Let's go. The restaurant, perched along the Embarcadero waterfront, glowed with candlelight and clinking glasses. Rachel felt out of place among the polished crowd, but Daniel guided her to a private table where a woman in a sleek red dress waited. This is Victoria Lane, Daniel said, introducing her. She's a partner on one of our projects. Victoria's smile was sharp, her eyes scanning Rachel. And you are? She asked, her tone dripping with curiosity. Rachel Bennett, Rachel said, shaking her hand. I'm just here with Daniel. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Oh, the neighbor girl? I heard you're crashing at his place. How quaint. Rachel's cheeks burned, but Daniel cut in, his voice cool. Rachel's my guest, Victoria. Let's keep this professional. Victoria laughed, but her eyes stayed cold, and Rachel sensed trouble brewing. Dinner was a blur of small talk and industry jargon. Rachel tried to follow, but Victoria kept steering the conversation to Daniel, dropping hints about their past meetings. As dessert arrived, Victoria leaned closer to Rachel. So, how's it feel living off Daniel's charity? Must be nice, no rent, no worries. Rachel gripped her fork, anger flaring. I'm not living off anyone. I'm just waiting out a building glitch. Daniel set down his glass, his jaw tight. That's enough, Victoria. Rachel's here because I want her here. The table went silent, and Victoria excused herself, her smile brittle. Rachel exhaled, grateful but rattled. Thanks for that, she murmured. Daniel nodded. She's out of line. You okay? Rachel managed to smile. Yeah, just not used to being the center of attention. Back at work the next day, the tension exploded. Rachel walked into a meeting where Isabel presented a design nearly identical to hers, claiming it as her own. This is my original concept, Isabel said, projecting confidence. Rachel must have copied it from the shared drive. Rachel stood, her voice firm. That's my work, Isabel. I pitched it last month, and I have the drafts to prove it. Margaret frowned, unconvinced. This is serious, Rachel. If you can't back up your claim, you're out. The room buzzed with whispers, and Rachel felt her future slipping away. She pulled up her laptop, ready to show her time-stamped files, but Isabel interrupted. Why bother? Everyone knows you're desperate to impress. Rachel's hands shook, but she refused to back down. Just then the conference room door opened and Daniel walked in, his presence commanding silence. Heads turned, confusion rippling through the team. Margaret stood, flustered. Mr. Foster, what brings you here? Daniel's gaze swept the room, landing on Rachel. I heard there's a dispute about originality. Let's clear it up. He nodded to a woman in a blazer who followed him in, carrying a tablet. This is Sarah from HR, he said. We've reviewed the project files, including metadata and edit histories. Rachel's design predates Isabel's by weeks. Isabel falsified an email to make it look otherwise. The room gasped and Isabel paled. That's not true, she stammered. Daniel's voice was steel. The evidence says otherwise, Margaret. Your oversight allowed this to escalate. You're done here. Isabel, you'll apologize publicly and we'll discuss your future separately. Margaret froze, her authority crumbling. But Mr. Foster, I didn't know, she said. Daniel ignored her, turning to Rachel. Your design's approved. I want you leading the spring collection project. Rachel's jaw dropped, her mind reeling. The meeting ended in stunned silence, with Margaret escorted out and Isabel slinking away. As the team dispersed, Rachel caught Daniel in the hall. You're the CEO? She asked, her voice a mix of awe and betrayal. Why didn't you tell me? Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. I wanted you to see me, not my title. You've got enough people judging you without me adding to it. Rachel softened, touched by his honesty. Okay, but no more secrets, deal? He smiled. A real one this time? Deal. That evening, Rachel insisted on cooking to celebrate, but Daniel had other plans. Let's take a break, he said. My car's acting up, and I could use a second pair of hands. They drove to a quiet street near the park, where his sleek sedan sputtered and stalled. Daniel popped the hood, frowning at the engine. Know anything about cars? He asked. Rachel laughed. Only that they break at the worst times. She handed him tools, teasing him when he fumbled a wrench. You're hopeless, she said, grabbing it. Let me try. They bickered playfully, grease smudging their hands, until the car roared back to life. Daniel stepped back, grinning. Not bad, Bennett. You're full of surprises. Rachel wiped her hands, her heart lighter. Takes one to know one, Foster. As they drove back, Rachel glanced at him, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. She'd come to his door a stranger, but now, sitting beside him, she felt something new, a spark she wasn't ready to name. Daniel caught her looking and raised an eyebrow. What's that smile for? She shrugged, playing it cool. Just thinking you're not the worst neighbor. He chuckled, and for a moment the world felt right. But back at the office, whispers were growing, and Rachel had no idea the storm waiting to test her newfound strength. Rachel Bennett sat in the waiting area of a sleek law office in downtown San Francisco, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The view of the Bay Bridge stretched outside, but her mind was elsewhere, locked on the meeting ahead. Daniel Foster stood beside her, flipping through a folder of documents, his jaw set. They were here to confront Thomas and Chloe Reed, Rachel's stepfather and stepsister, who'd stolen her family's legacy years ago. She'd never thought this day would come, but Daniel had made it happen, tracking down proof of their schemes. "You ready?" he asked, his voice steady. Rachel nodded, though her stomach churned. "Ready as I'll ever be. I just want this over." He gave her a reassuring look. "You're not alone in there. Let's take back what's yours." The lawyer, a sharp woman named Miss Carter, ushered them into a conference room where Thomas and Chloe waited. Thomas, graying and smug, leaned back in his chair while Chloe scrolled on her phone, barely glancing up. Miss Carter wasted no time. "Mr. Reed, Ms. Reed, we have evidence of illegal transactions tied to the Bennett Company. Bank records show you diverted funds meant for Rachel's inheritance. Sign these papers to transfer the shares back or we'll pursue charges." Thomas laughed, a hollow sound. "You're bluffing. There's no proof." Daniel stepped forward, sliding the folder across the table. "These are audited statements, wire transfers, and emails. It's enough for a fraud case that'll land you in court for years." Chloe's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "Dad, what's she talking about?" Thomas's confidence faltered as he skimmed the documents. "This is nonsense," he muttered, but his hands shook. Rachel spoke, her voice clear despite the knot in her chest. "You took everything, my dad's work, my home. I was a kid and you left me with nothing. Sign it, Thomas. Give me back what's mine." Chloe scoffed. "You don't deserve it, Rachel. You're nobody." Daniel's gaze hardened. "Watch your words. Rachel's worth more than you'll ever be." Thomas, pale now, grabbed a pen and signed, muttering apologies that rang hollow. Chloe followed, glaring but silent. Ms. Carter collected the papers, nodding to Rachel. "The shares are yours again. Congratulations." Rachel exhaled, a weight lifting, but victory felt bittersweet. She looked at Daniel, gratitude flooding her. "Thank you," she whispered. He squeezed her hand. "You did the hard part." That evening, Daniel suggested they celebrate at a BBQ joint near the Mission District, a lively spot with checkered tablecloths and the smell of smoked brisket. Rachel, still processing the day, managed a smile as they ordered ribs and cornbread. "You didn't have to do all this," she said, picking at her plate. Daniel shrugged, his green eyes warm. "You deserved justice. Plus, I'm starving, and you're not cooking tonight." She laughed, the sound freer than it had been in days. They talked over the meal, the hum of the restaurant fading into the background. Rachel admitted her fears. "I've got my dad's company back, but what if I'm not enough to run it? What if I'm not enough for—" She trailed off, glancing at him. Daniel leaned closer. "For what? For me. Rachel, you're more than enough. You're the strongest person I know." Her heart raced, but doubt lingered. He was a CEO, a world apart from her struggles. The next day at Starlight Designs, trouble brewed again. Rachel overheard whispers in the break room, colleagues eyeing her strangely. By lunch, the rumor hit her like a punch. Someone had spread a story that she'd had an improper relationship with a professor in college, tainting her reputation. She traced it back to Victoria Lane, the business partner from the restaurant, who'd sent an anonymous email to the team. Rachel confronted her at a coffee shop meeting, keeping her voice calm. "Why are you doing this, Victoria? I've never hurt you." Victoria smirked, stirring her latte. "You're in my way, Rachel. Daniel's distracted, and I don't lose to girls like you." Rachel clenched her fists. "He's not a prize to win. Back off." She walked away, shaken but resolute, knowing she had to clear her name. Rachel told Daniel that evening, pacing his apartment. "It's not true," she said, her voice cracking. "I worked hard in school, top grades, no scandals." "Why would she lie?" Daniel's face darkened. "Victoria's playing dirty. I'll handle it." He made calls, digging into the rumor's source, and found the professor in question, now retired, who confirmed it was a misunderstanding from a rival student years ago. Daniel drafted a statement for Starlight's internal network, debunking the lie, and cut ties with Victoria's company, citing unprofessional conduct. When Rachel saw the email, her relief was tinged with awe. "You did all that for me?" she asked. Daniel nodded. Nobody messes with you on my watch. Emboldened, Rachel opened up as they sat on his balcony, the city lights sprawling below. I like you, Daniel, she said, her voice soft. But I'm scared. You're this big-shot CEO, and I'm just figuring things out. What if this is too much? He took her hand, his touch warm. I don't care about titles, Rachel. I like you, the real you, the one who fights for what's right. Let me prove it. He suggested a morning walk to clear their heads, a chance to talk about what's next. Rachel agreed, her heart lighter but still cautious. As they planned, her phone buzzed with a new email from Starlight Designs, assigning her a bigger role in the spring collection. She smiled, feeling her world shift. But a new challenge loomed, one that would test not just her strength, but their bond. Rachel Bennett adjusted her scarf as she stepped out of Daniel Foster's car, the crisp San Francisco air brushing her cheeks. It had been months since she'd first knocked on his door, a desperate neighbor locked out of her apartment. Now she was here, standing before a grand Pacific Heights mansion, about to meet Daniel's family. He'd asked her to join him for a charity event hosted by his grandmother, Eleanor Gray, a woman known for her sharp mind and sharper standards. Rachel's stomach fluttered. What if they don't like me? She said, smoothing her dress, a simple navy piece she'd designed herself. Daniel squeezed her hand, his green eyes steady. They'll love you, just be yourself. That's more than enough. She smiled, drawing strength from his words. But doubt lingered as they walked through the iron gates. The mansion buzzed with guests, string lights twinkling over a garden filled with donation booths and art displays. Eleanor Gray stood at the center, her silver hair elegant, her presence commanding. She greeted Daniel with a warm hug, then turned to Rachel, her gaze appraising. So, you're the one Daniel's been talking about, she said, her voice measured. Rachel Bennett, is it? Rachel nodded, offering a handshake. It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Gray. I've heard so much about your work with local shelters. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, intrigued, polite and prepared. Tell me, Rachel, why are you here tonight? Rachel hesitated, then spoke from the heart. I believe in giving back. I've had tough times and I want to help others find their way. Eleanor studied her, then gestured to a booth. We're short-handed at the recycled fashion display. Care to pitch in? Rachel jumped at the chance, rolling up her sleeves. She spent hours organizing donated clothes, chatting with guests about sustainable design. Her passion shone through, turning heads, including Eleanor's. Rachel suggested a pop-up runway show, using volunteers to model the pieces, and pulled it off with flair, earning applause. As the event wound down, Eleanor pulled her aside. That was impressive, Rachel, but I need to know what drives you. Are you with my grandson for his world or for him? Rachel met her gaze. I love Daniel for who he is, not what he has. When I was at my lowest, he saw me, really saw me. I'd choose him even if he had nothing. Eleanor's expression softened. I believe you. I was testing you tonight and you passed with flying colors. Welcome to the family. Rachel's eyes welled up, and Daniel, overhearing, grinned. Told you she's special, Grandma. The next day, Daniel drove Rachel to Starlight Designs, where good news waited. An email from a former professor, Dr. Larson, had hit the company's inbox, copied to the entire design team. It read, Years ago, a false rumor about Rachel Bennett's conduct in college caused her pain. I'm setting the record straight. It was baseless, spread by a jealous peer. Rachel earned her honors through hard work. My apologies for the harm done. Rachel stared at the screen, relief washing over her. The whispers that had followed her, fueled by Victoria Lane's lies, faded as colleagues offered nods of respect. Margaret Hayes was gone, Isabel Ward was on probation, and Rachel's new project was gaining buzz. She threw herself into leading the spring collection, her sketches bolder, her confidence soaring. That evening, Daniel picked her up, suggesting a detour to Presidio Park. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, with the Golden Gate Bridge framing the horizon. They walked along a quiet trail, eucalyptus trees rustling softly. Rachel felt lighter than ever, her past reclaimed, her future bright. Daniel stopped near a lookout point, turning to her, his expression serious. "Rachel, these past months have changed me," he said. "I've built a lot, but none of it matters without you. You're my partner, my home." He pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple silver ring, its diamond catching the fading light. "Will you marry me?" Rachel's breath caught, her heart racing. She thought of their journey from a locked door to this moment, and knew her answer. "Yes," she said, tears spilling. "Yes, I'll marry you." Daniel slid the ring onto her finger, pulling her into a kiss as the city glowed below. They laughed, giddy, and sat on a bench, planning a small wedding, maybe at a vineyard nearby. Rachel rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm not quitting my job, you know," she said, half teasing. "I want to build my own path, not just lean on yours." Daniel chuckled. "I wouldn't have it any other way. You're going to take over the fashion world, and I'll be cheering you on." Rachel grinned, imagining her next collection, her name on a label, her dreams within reach. A week later, Daniel brought her back to the Pacific Heights mansion for a family dinner. His parents, warm and welcoming, greeted Rachel like one of their own. His mom, Linda, pulled her into a hug. "We've heard all about you, Rachel. You're exactly what Daniel needs, someone who stands tall." His dad, Robert, winked. "Just don't let him boss you around too much." Daniel groaned, and Rachel laughed, feeling at home. Over dessert, Eleanor raised a glass. "To Rachel," she said, "for bringing light to our family, and to love, which finds us when we least expect it." Rachel clinked glasses, her ring glinting, and caught Daniel's eye. He mouthed, "I love you," and she mouthed it back, her heart full. As they left the mansion, hand in hand, Rachel looked at the stars above San Francisco. She'd come so far, from a girl locked out of her life to a woman unlocking her future. With Daniel by her side, she felt ready for anything, a partner who'd fight for her, just as she'd fight for herself. Their story wasn't over. It was just beginning, and Rachel knew, no matter what came next, they'd face it together. And so Rachel Bennett and Daniel Foster found their forever, a love that started with a locked door and grew through battles won together. Rachel's journey wasn't just about finding romance, it was about reclaiming her strength. She walked into Starlight Designs as an underdog, fighting whispers and doubts, her sketches a quiet rebellion against those who tried to dim her light. Her stepfather and stepsister stole her past, but with Daniel's support she took it back, not with anger, but with the kind of courage that reshapes a life. From a night of desperation in a stranger's apartment to a sunset proposal in Presidio Park, Rachel learned that love doesn't just catch you when you fall, it lifts you higher than you dreamed. Daniel, the CEO who hid his title, didn't need wealth to win her heart. He needed only the honesty to stand by her side, grease-smudged hands and all. This story reminds us that life can lock you out of homes, dreams, or hope itself, but the right people hold the key to something better. Rachel's grit, her refusal to quit even when the odds stacked against her, that's what carried her forward. She didn't just find love, she found herself, a designer with a vision, a woman who'd build her own empire, ring or no ring. And Daniel, he showed us love isn't about grand gestures, it's about showing up, whether it's fixing a car or facing down a liar. Together they prove that resilience and trust can open doors no one else can. So what did you think of Rachel and Daniel's story? Did it make your heart race when he dropped to one knee? Or maybe you cheered when Rachel stood up to her past? Hit that like button if their journey warmed your soul, and don't forget to subscribe for more tales of love that spark laughter, tears, and everything in between. Drop a comment below. Tell us what moved you most. Have you ever had a moment where a stranger became your everything, or a day when you found strength you didn't know you had? We're reading every word, so share your heart with us. He was never supposed to lose. Not in business, not in love, and especially not in a game. But when Alexander Steele leaned back in his leather chair, a whiskey glass in one hand and a lazy smirk on his face, He didn't know that the dare his friend tossed across the private poker table would be the one thing that would strip him bare. "Bet you can undress her," Blake said, nodding toward the grainy security feed on his phone. It was late, the after-party had died down, and they were in the billionaire's high-rise penthouse, surrounded by the spoils of wealth, crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and enough champagne to drown regret. Who? Alexander barely looked up. Blake zoomed in on the image. A girl mopping the floor, near the executive elevator. Her, that virgin janitor everyone whispers about, Eva something. Rumor is she hasn't even kissed a man. The guys chuckled, half-drunk, careless. Alexander raised an eyebrow, finally glancing at the screen. The image was blurred, black and white, but even through the pixelation, something in her posture caught his attention. She wasn't bent with shame. She moved like she belonged there, even if her uniform said otherwise. "Undress her?" he repeated, swirling his drink. "What is this, high school?" "You've seduced actresses, heiresses, supermodels," Blake laughed. "We all know you win. But this one? She's different. No status, no ambition, just skin and silence. I bet you can't even get her to look at you twice." Alexander should have walked away, but ego was a stubborn animal, and curiosity, a more dangerous one. He stared at the frozen frame. She looked unimpressed by the world, unimpressed by men like him. That was new. "All right," he said slowly, downing the rest of his drink. "You're on. Let's see what a virgin janitor can do to a billionaire." He didn't know then that she'd end up undressing far more than his expectations. The next day, Alexander was back in the office early, not to sign off on billion-dollar tech deals, not to renegotiate mergers, but to see her. He watched from his glass corner suite as she stepped off the night shift elevator, alone. She wore oversized gray scrubs, her hair tucked into a loose bun under a plain cap, pushing a mop cart with steady rhythm. She didn't notice the stares, or maybe she'd learned to ignore them. Her face was bare of makeup, her body neither flaunted nor hidden. But there was something arresting in her simplicity, something unapologetically honest. She walked like she owed nothing, and that was precisely why he had to know her. At 34, Alexander had tasted every kind of thrill, but he'd never met someone who didn't seem to want anything from him. No fake smiles, no lipstick lies, just quiet. A quiet he suddenly craved. That night he stayed late on purpose. The building thinned out by 10. By 11, it was only night crew. Midnight was janitor time. She stepped in as scheduled, entering with her cart, her ID badge catching the dim hallway light. Alexander leaned against his office doorframe, arms crossed, watching. "Rough night?" he asked casually. She glanced up, surprised. Her eyes met his, deep brown, like earth after rain. She didn't smile. "I've had worse." Her voice was low, measured. "And you are?" He chuckled. No spark of recognition. That was rare. "Alex, I work here too." "Figured," she said, dipping her mop back into the bucket, unfazed. No double take, no blush, no, "Oh my God, are you Alexander Steele?" She was either unimpressed or uninterested. Both options irritated and intrigued him. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then sighed. "Eva." He watched her mop. "You're not going to ask what I do?" "If it matters, I'll find out eventually," she said, keeping her eyes on the floor. He smiled. She was more than he expected. "Do you always speak in puzzles?" "Only when men ask questions like they already know the answers." That made him laugh genuinely. He took a step forward, and she paused, sensing him too close. "Relax," he murmured. "I'm just bored." "Then maybe go home," she replied. "This floor's clean." He should have walked away. But he didn't, because for the first time in years, someone didn't care who he was, and that made him care more than he should have. She didn't know she was a dare. He didn't know she'd become his undoing. But the game had started, and by the time it ended, Alexander Steele, a man who never believed in surrender, would willingly lay his soul bare at her feet. For the next week, he didn't chase her. He simply showed up. She would arrive with her mop and gloves, expecting silence, only to find him seated near the window with a mug of coffee, reading something he wasn't actually reading. Sometimes he asked questions: what music she liked, what she thought of Seattle rain, whether she believed everyone was lonely, even in crowded rooms. Sometimes she ignored him. Other times she answered with curt honesty that cut through him more than any flirt ever had. He learned that she was 23, that she was paying her mother's medical debt with 2 jobs, that she hadn't been to college because survival came first. He learned she read poetry she couldn't afford to buy, borrowed through the cleaning closet bookshelf. She loved Neruda and hated lies. She also told him, quite plainly, that she wasn't interested in men who wore suits like armor. "They always want to own something," she said once, not even looking at him. "A girl's body, a girl's story, a girl's silence." He wanted to say, "I'm not like them," but he didn't, because he was. At least he had been. Until now. Each night she left, he was the one who felt stripped, of arrogance, of certainty. He used to enjoy being pursued. Now he sat alone, realizing the one woman he wanted didn't want him back. Not for his charm, not for his power, and especially not for his money. She looked at him like she saw past all of it, like she was waiting to see if there was anything left worth undressing underneath. Blake, of course, kept asking, "Did you do it yet?" He snorted over a scotch one night. "Is little Eva still untouched?" Alexander didn't answer, not because he couldn't, but because suddenly the question felt stupid. She wasn't a virgin to conquer. She was a mirror, one he hadn't dared to look into until now, and it terrified him. The turning point came on a Friday night. A security glitch caused a brief lockdown on the top floor. The lights flickered, the elevators stalled. Alexander was in the office. So was she. "Looks like we're stuck," he said, as she stood near the hallway, gripping her mop like it might save her. "Generator will kick in soon." "I'm not afraid," she said, even though her voice shook. "I know," he replied softly, "but maybe I am." She looked at him then, truly looked, and saw past the tailored shirt, the sculpted jaw, the wealth. His eyes were tired, not from work, from carrying too much of something unnamed. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Talking to me? Watching me mop your floors like it's a performance?" He didn't blink. "Because I made a mistake," he said. "It started as a dare, a stupid, ego-driven thing. But then I saw you, and it wasn't about that anymore. I don't want to undress your body. I want to understand why you wear silence like a second skin." She stared at him, stunned into stillness. For a moment she said nothing. Then, "Most men try to touch me. You try to touch my pain." He stepped closer, not enough to invade, just enough for honesty. "Because I recognize it, I carry my own." In the dim light of that glitching hallway, something shifted. She saw not a billionaire, but a boy who once needed permission to feel. He saw not a virgin janitor, but a woman who chose herself in a world that wanted to steal everything from her. She lowered her eyes and whispered, "You're undoing everything I believe about men." He smiled gently. "And you're undoing everything I believe about myself." He thought he'd strip her defenses. Instead, she peeled off his pride, layer by layer, until all that was left was truth. The lights came back on, the elevator chimed, but neither of them moved for a long while. After that night, things weren't the same. Alexander started arriving at the office earlier, not to work, but just to catch a glimpse of her before she disappeared into some stairwell or utility closet. Sometimes she spoke first, sometimes she didn't, but she was different too, softer at the edges, as if she was letting go of something she'd held too tight for too long. She didn't smile often, but when she did, it was the kind that made his breath catch. And God, she had no idea. She wore her hair tied up, practical, always with a pen behind one ear. Her uniform hung loose, oversized, probably borrowed. Her shoes were the kind you bought on clearance, worn through the soles, but none of it mattered. To him, she was thunder wrapped in quiet. A slow burn. He once caught her, standing on the rooftop alone after hours, watching the city from the edge of the world. He joined her without asking. "Do you ever wonder if this view is only beautiful because we're above it?" she murmured. "Because down there, it's chaos." He nodded. "That's why I come up here, to pretend I've figured it all out." "Have you?" she asked. "Not even close," he replied. That night, he walked her down the stairs not because he had to, but because he couldn't seem to stop orbiting her. Days passed, then a week. Blake called again. "You ghosting me now? Thought you'd have cracked that little virgin by now." The words made Alexander wince. "It's not like that," he said, flat. "Then what is it?" Blake laughed. "She got magic between her legs?" "No," Alexander said quietly. "She's got magic between her silences." Blake didn't get it. He wouldn't, but Alexander was already too far gone. He wasn't chasing lust anymore. He was chasing the feeling of being seen. Eva didn't flirt. She didn't touch. But when she looked at him, really looked, it was like she saw the boy inside the billionaire, the one who had once been told, "Men don't cry, men don't break, men win or they're weak." With her, he didn't have to win. He just had to be honest. Then came the night that changed everything. A burst pipe in the east wing flooded part of the building. Eva was there, trying to stop the leak before it damaged the executive floor. She was drenched by the time Alexander found her, her soaked uniform clinging to her like second skin, her breath short, hands trembling from the cold. "You shouldn't be doing this alone," he said, stepping in beside her. "It's my job," she replied. "And besides, you don't get your hands dirty, right?" Instead of answering, he rolled up his sleeves and grabbed the wrench from her hand. "Tell that to my dry cleaner." She stared at him, surprised. He wasn't perfect at it. His grip slipped, water sprayed, but he didn't stop. And she watched him with something new in her eyes. Not pity, not awe, something softer. When they finally shut the valve, they stood in silence, soaked and breathing hard, water pooling around their shoes. "Why are you really here, Alexander?" she asked, her voice hoarse. He looked at her, and for once he didn't hide. "Because I used to think having everything meant needing nothing. Then I met you. And now I realize I'm starving." She said nothing at first, just looked at him, her hair hung in wet strands, her cheeks flushed, her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. Then, quietly, slowly, she reached for his hand. It was small, calloused, and trembling, but it was hers. He didn't move, didn't breathe. He let her hold it, and when she did, it felt like she wasn't touching his skin. She was touching the parts of him no one had ever touched before. The damaged parts, the frightened parts, the parts still waiting to be chosen. "You think you were undressing me," she whispered, eyes locked on his, "but all this time, you were the one stripped bare." Alexander didn't know how long they stood there, wet and breathless, clinging to that fragile moment like it might break. But something shifted, not in the air, not in their bodies, but deep in the silence between their heartbeats. He followed her that night, not as a CEO, not as a man trying to win some bet, but as someone finally surrendering to the gravity of what he felt. They went back to the staff wing, through empty halls echoing with their footsteps, her hand never leaving his. Her room was small, barely big enough for the narrow bed and the stack of borrowed books by the window. She lit no candles, played no music, made no excuses for the peeling paint or cracked tiles. It was all real, raw, unadorned, just like her. She sat on the bed, pulled the towel from her hair, and stared at him, not with expectation, not with invitation, but with something braver, permission. "You can leave now," she said, voice steady. "Or you can stay. But if you stay because you see me." He stepped closer. "I do." She didn't look away. "No, Alexander. I mean the parts I've spent years trying to hide. The girl who still cries when she hears her father's favorite song. The girl who grew up being told she wasn't enough. The girl who didn't give herself away because she thought no one would stay afterward." He knelt in front of her, hands on her knees. "Then let me be the man who stays." Her breath caught, trembling on her lips, and when he leaned in not to kiss her, but just to rest his forehead against hers, it was the most intimate thing either of them had ever known. They didn't undress in a rush. There was no urgency, no conquest, just hands and eyes and time. She touched his chest not like a lover, but like an artist discovering texture for the first time. And when he finally slid her shirt over her shoulders, he did it the way someone would peel back a curtain to see sunrise. "You're beautiful," he said. She laughed, almost sad. "No, I'm not what you're used to." "Exactly," he whispered. "You're better." Their bodies met like puzzle pieces, not perfectly, but with that aching satisfaction of things finally falling into place. And afterward, in the hush between midnight and morning, she curled into him, her breath warm against his throat. He didn't speak, he just held her tighter, as if afraid she'd disappear. But she didn't. She stayed, and for the first time in years, so did he. He didn't check his phone, didn't think about shareholders or meetings or Blake's smug voice. All he thought about was how fragile she looked when she slept, and how invincible she made him feel just by trusting him. At dawn, she stirred. "You're still here," she murmured. He kissed the top of her head. "I told you I would be." "You don't even know everything about me," she said. "Maybe I'm not who you think I am." He smiled into her hair. "Good, because who I think you are scares the hell out of me, in the best way." She lifted her face, her eyes unreadable. "What happens now?" And Alexander, billionaire, breaker of hearts, who once treated emotions like a weakness, said the most dangerous thing of all. "Now, I stop pretending this was ever a game." The Monday morning after their night together, Alexander didn't show up at the penthouse boardroom. For the first time since founding Ashcroft Industries, he canceled a meeting with investors. Blake called twice. Alexander didn't answer. He stayed in the staff wing, sitting at the foot of her bed, watching her braid her hair in front of the mirror, with sleepy eyes and soft humming. "You're not going in today?" she asked without turning. "I already did the only thing that matters," he replied. She shook her head, half smiling. "That's not how CEOs stay rich." "That's not how souls stay empty either," he murmured. She turned to look at him then, as if seeing something brand new in his face. And maybe she was. Because the man who sat in her room barefoot, shirt half-buttoned, eyes warm with something close to reverence, wasn't the Alexander everyone else knew. He wasn't the wolf who played at loyalty only when it served him. He wasn't the man who saw women as currencies or distractions. He was hers, even if neither of them said it aloud. But the world wasn't made of rooms like hers. It was made of glass towers and whispered deals and people like Blake, who always smelled weakness before it showed. That afternoon, Alexander returned to the office, jaw tight, heart still tangled in her scent. Blake waited outside the elevator, arms crossed. "You missed your pitch call," he said flatly. "Didn't feel like selling today," Alexander answered, brushing past him, And I told you, the janitor girl was off limits. Alexander stopped mid-step, slowly turned. She's not a girl, he said. She's a woman, one I'd trust with more than any name on your Forbes list. Blake narrowed his eyes. You're falling for her. Off a bet. You know how pathetic that sounds. Alexander's voice dropped to a whisper, sharp as glass. You know what's more pathetic? Thinking love is weakness. I used to believe that too, until she undressed more than just my body. She undressed every part I've tried to hide, every lie I built this empire on, and I've never felt stronger. Blake scoffed and walked away, muttering something about loyalty and fortune. Alexander didn't follow. He just exhaled slowly, knowing exactly what needed to happen next. That night, he didn't return to the penthouse. He returned to her. She was barefoot in the kitchen, wearing one of his old shirts she must have found in the laundry. Her hair was down, eyes tired but gentle. Back already? She asked, surprised. He nodded. I need to ask you something. She arched a brow, but said nothing. Did it mean something to you too? What happened between us? She looked at him for a long time. I don't sleep with men to win games, Alexander. I don't undress to feel seen. I gave you something I hadn't given anyone, because you made me believe, just maybe, I wasn't invisible anymore. He stepped forward, took her face in both hands. You've never been invisible. I just hadn't learned how to look. Then came a silence that wasn't empty. It was full of unsaid things, of two people standing on the edge of something they couldn't take back. And if I told you, he whispered, that I'm not just ready to lose the game, I want to burn the rule book? Her breath hitched. Then I'd ask what happens when the flames die out. Then I'll stay, he said, and build something new. With you. For the next few days, the world outside her small apartment seemed to blur. Alexander stayed, slept on the couch, though she quietly knew he was only pretending to be asleep. In the mornings, he made coffee without asking how she liked it, and somehow got it right. In the evenings, they cooked simple things together, pasta with too much garlic, grilled cheese that always burned at the edges, and once, pancakes for dinner. It felt absurdly domestic, dangerously intimate. But in that bubble of time, it also felt like freedom. One night, as she lay curled beside him on the couch, watching an old movie neither of them cared about, she whispered, I still don't understand why me. He didn't look away from the screen as he said, because you didn't ask for anything, but gave me everything. Because you didn't try to impress me, you undid me. Because when I was the most powerful man in the room, you made me feel small. And I liked it. She turned her face into his chest, hiding the way her lips trembled. Not because she was afraid, but because her heart was expanding into places it had never dared to go before. Maybe this wasn't just a story about a challenge. Maybe this was a beginning. But reality always found a way back in. On a Thursday morning, her supervisor at the janitorial agency called. A whisper had reached their office. The billionaire was entertaining staff. The agency didn't want a scandal. You'll need to resign, the woman on the phone said briskly. We don't do tabloid romance, and you clearly crossed a line. She hung up before the girl could say a word. That afternoon, Alexander returned from a meeting to find her sitting on the edge of her bed, holding the folded uniform she had worn the first night they met. Her hands were shaking. They fired me, she said softly. He froze, then stepped toward her. Because of me. She nodded. They said I crossed a line. He dropped to one knee in front of her, cupping her hands in his. No, I did. I pulled you into a world where rules don't apply. I should have protected you from the fallout. She looked at him then, eyes wet but fierce. Don't you dare apologize for loving me, not if you mean it. His breath caught. I do, he said. More than I know how to say. She pressed her forehead to his. Then say it without words. Say it by not running when this gets ugly. That night, Alexander made a choice, not out of guilt, not out of pity, but out of a deep, aching need to show her that she was more than a secret he kept behind closed doors. He made a call to his board, announced that he would be stepping away temporarily to focus on a new venture. This isn't a retirement, he told them. It's a return to something real. Blake tried to object, of course, warning him of the shareholders, the press, the empire at risk, but Alexander didn't flinch. Empires built on hollow men eventually collapse, he said. She's made me whole. The boardroom fell silent. The girl watched from the corner of the room, her heart thudding as he spoke her name aloud in front of them all. He didn't care who heard, didn't care what they thought. In that moment, she understood. This wasn't a man driven by conquest anymore. This was a man unburdened, and she was the reason. 2 weeks later, they walked into the charity gala together hand in hand. The cameras, the whispers, the barely concealed gasps from New York's most elite, it didn't matter. He had made his choice, and she was no longer a challenge, no longer a dare, no longer a secret. She wore a gown he had chosen not because it was expensive, but because when she looked in the mirror, she whispered, "I almost didn't recognize myself." And he replied, "That's funny. I've never seen you more clearly." The room parted around them like water as they passed, and yet she stood straighter than ever, chin up, fingers laced tightly with his. They paused in front of the press wall, and when a journalist dared to ask, "Mr. Grayson, is this your date or your employee?" Alexander didn't miss a beat. "This," he said, turning to her, "is the woman who taught me how to feel." And then he kissed her. Not for show, not to prove anything, just because he needed her lips more than the next breath. That night they danced beneath a sea of chandeliers. She was still shy, still unsure of how to glide in heels, but in his arms she moved like she belonged. When the music softened, he leaned in and whispered against her ear, "You undressed my soul the moment you looked at me like I was just a man, not a title, not a wallet, not a challenge." She pulled back just far enough to meet his eyes and said, "That's all I ever saw, a man who needed someone to see past the armor." They didn't stay long. He wrapped his jacket around her shoulders and led her outside, the city glittering behind them, but her hand was all he needed. In the back of the car, she rested her head against his chest, the steady rhythm of his heart grounding her in a life she never expected. "What happens next?" she asked quietly. "We live," he said, "not as a billionaire and a janitor, just as two people who found something real in a world that tries to fake everything." Later that night, as they lay together, no titles, no power plays, no games. He brushed her hair from her face and murmured the words she didn't know she needed, until they broke her wide open. "You weren't part of the challenge, you were the reward." Her throat tightened. She cupped his jaw, traced her thumb along the scar near his cheekbone, and whispered back, "Then I'm keeping you, all of you, even the pieces that still ache." He closed his eyes, holding her like he was afraid to let go, and for the first time in his life, Alexander Grayson surrendered, not to power, not to pride, but to the girl who had been dared to undress and ended up exposing everything he never wanted to show anyone. The morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, casting long golden streaks across the room. She stirred beside him, tangled in the sheets, her lashes fluttering as if resisting the pull of the new day. Alexander watched her in silence, the quiet peace on her face a stark contrast to the war he had waged within himself for years. It was strange, he thought, how someone so gentle could dismantle the strongest defenses without even trying. She blinked awake, turned toward him, and smiled that sleepy, messy smile that had no pretense, no polish, just truth. "You're staring," she whispered, voice still husky with sleep. "Because I don't ever want to forget this," he murmured, brushing his fingers down her arm. "The way you look right now, the way I feel, it's the only thing that feels real anymore." She sat up slowly, pulling the sheets around herself, her voice quieter now. "This was supposed to be a game, a dare. You weren't supposed to feel anything." He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Neither were you." Silence stretched for a beat before she asked, "And now?" He leaned in, resting his forehead to hers. "Now, I feel everything." She pulled back slightly, her eyes searching his. "Do you mean that?" "More than I've meant anything in my life," he said. "I was dared to undress a virgin. But you undressed every part of me I thought was untouchable. You saw the man, not the monster. And now I can't go back to who I was before you." She swallowed hard, her voice almost breaking. "Then don't." He exhaled sharply, like her words had knocked the air from his lungs. "Tell me what you want," he said, his tone low, almost desperate. "Anything, everything, it's yours." She paused, her fingers curling tighter around his. "I want a love that doesn't come with expiration dates or hidden conditions. I want to matter, not because I'm someone's fantasy, but because I'm real." His eyes never left hers. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life showing you that you do. Starting now." She smiled through the tears that blurred her vision, and then, half laughing, she whispered, "You're not great at challenges, are you?" He raised an eyebrow, mock offended. "Why do you say that?" "Because this time you lost the dare and gave me your heart instead." He grinned, pulling her against him again. "Correction," he murmured into her hair. "I didn't lose. I finally won something worth everything." Imagine marrying someone who despises you, only to discover that beneath their cold exterior lies a heart full of secrets and pain. In today's story, we'll uncover the shocking journey of a powerful CEO who weds a woman out of revenge, only to find himself falling deeply in love on their wedding night. But can love truly conquer betrayal? Join us to understand the story better. The city was cloaked in darkness, the rain pouring relentlessly as if the heavens themselves were mourning. Neon lights reflected off the wet pavement, casting an eerie glow on the empty streets. High above the chaos, in a sleek glass tower, Logan St. James sat alone in his office. The room was silent, save for the rhythmic tapping of his fingers against the edge of his desk. His sharp blue eyes stared out at the storm, but his mind was far away, lost in the shadows of his past. Logan was a man of power, a name that commanded respect in the world of medical technology. To the outside world, he was a visionary, a genius who had revolutionized healthcare. But beneath the polished exterior lay a man haunted by pain, a pain that had festered for years, growing into a cold, unrelenting. He closed his eyes, and the memories came flooding back. His mother's frail figure, her tear-streaked face as she clung to him, whispering apologies she didn't owe. The image of her lying alone in a hospital bed, abandoned by the man who had once promised her the world. That man was Robert Brooks, the father of Haley Brooks, the woman Logan had sworn to destroy. Logan's jaw tightened as he leaned back in his chair. He had waited years for this moment, meticulously planning every step. Now the time had come. Haley Brooks would pay for her father's sins, and Logan would finally have his revenge. But as the storm raged on outside, a small, unspoken question lingered in the back of his mind. Would revenge truly fill the void in his heart? Logan St. James hadn't always been the cold, calculating man he was today. There was a time when his life was filled with warmth, laughter, and the unconditional love of his mother, Margaret St. James. She was his world, a woman of grace and strength, who had raised him alone after his father's untimely death. For years it was just the two of them, and though they didn't have much, they had each other. But everything changed when Robert Brooks entered their lives. Robert was a wealthy businessman, charming and persuasive. He promised Margaret stability, a future free from struggle. For a brief moment, Logan believed they could finally have the family they deserved. But those promises were nothing more than lies. Robert's betrayal came swiftly and without warning. He abandoned Margaret for another woman, leaving her to pick up the pieces of a shattered life. The fallout was devastating. Margaret's health began to decline, her once bright eyes dimmed by heartbreak and exhaustion. Logan, still a teenager at the time, watched helplessly as the woman who had been his rock crumbled under the weight of Robert's betrayal. The final blow came when Margaret passed away, alone in a hospital room, her hand clutching a photograph of Logan. Logan's grief quickly turned to anger, and that anger hardened into a resolve that would shape the rest of his life. He vowed to rebuild everything they had lost, to rise above the ashes of his mother's suffering, and when he did, he would make Robert Brooks pay. Years later, Logan had kept his promise. He had built an empire in the medical technology industry, a company that saved lives and generated billions. But his success wasn't enough. The pain of his mother's death still lingered, a constant reminder of the man who had destroyed her. Then, fate handed him an opportunity. Robert Brooks was no longer the powerful man he once was. His health was failing and his fortune had dwindled. But he had a daughter, Haley Brooks. She was nothing like her father, kind, selfless, and dedicated to helping others. But to Logan, she was the perfect target. If he couldn't destroy Robert directly, he would do it through her. Logan's lips curled into a cold smile as he thought of Haley. She had no idea what was coming. The first time Logan St. James saw Haley Brooks, she was standing in the middle of a crowded community center, her hands full of donation boxes, her face flushed from the effort. She wasn't what he had expected. In his mind, the daughter of Robert Brooks would be spoiled, entitled, and oblivious to the struggles of others. But Haley was none of those things. She was ordinary. Her clothes were simple, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail, and her smile, though tired, was genuine. She moved through the room with a quiet determination, stopping to thank volunteers and offer words of encouragement. Logan watched her from a distance, his sharp eyes studying her every move. This was the woman he had spent years preparing to destroy. For a moment he hesitated, but only for a moment. Logan adjusted his tie and stepped forward, his presence commanding attention as he approached her. "Miss Brooks?" he said, his voice smooth and calculated. Haley turned, startled by the tall, impeccably dressed man standing before her. "I'm Logan St. James. I've heard about the work you're doing here, and I must say, it's impressive." Haley blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Oh, thank you," she said, her voice soft but steady. "We're just trying to do what we can for the community." Logan offered a charming smile, one he'd perfected over years of boardroom negotiations. "I'd like to help," he said simply. "Whatever you need, funding, resources, connections, consider it done." Haley's eyes widened in surprise. "That's incredibly generous of you, Mr. St. James. But why would you want to help us?" Logan tilted his head, feigning thoughtfulness. "Let's just say I believe in giving back," he replied smoothly, "and I admire people who dedicate their lives to helping others." It was a lie, of course. Logan didn't care about the community center or the people it served. This was merely the first step in his plan. By presenting himself as a benefactor, he could gain Haley's trust and insert himself into her life. From there, it would only be a matter of time before he had her exactly where he wanted her. Over the next few weeks, Logan made good on his promise. He donated a substantial sum to the community center, attended events, and even volunteered his time, always ensuring that Haley noticed his efforts. Slowly but surely, he became a fixture in her world, a presence she couldn't ignore. And yet, something unexpected began to happen. The more time Logan spent around Haley, the more he found himself drawn to her. It wasn't just her kindness or her dedication to others. It was the way she carried herself. the quiet strength she exuded despite the challenges she faced. She was nothing like her father, and that realization unsettled him. Logan shook off the thought. This wasn't about her. This was about revenge, and he wouldn't let himself forget that. But as he watched Haley laugh with a group of children at the community center, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a question he wasn't ready to answer. What if she didn't deserve this? Logan St. James was a man who thrived on control. Every move he made was calculated, every word carefully chosen. And now, as he sat across from Haley Brooks in a quiet corner of a bustling cafe, he knew he was about to make his boldest move yet. Haley looked exhausted. The dark circles under her eyes betrayed sleepless nights, and her hands trembled slightly as she stirred her coffee. Logan had been watching her closely over the past few weeks, and he knew the weight she carried. Her father's health was deteriorating rapidly, and the medical bills were piling up. She was running out of options, and Logan was ready to offer her a lifeline, one that would bind her to him forever. "I've been thinking," Logan began, his voice calm and measured, "about your situation, about your father." Haley glanced up at him, her brow furrowed. "What about it?" Logan leaned forward, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. "I want to help you, Haley. I can cover your father's medical expenses, ensure he gets the best care possible. You won't have to worry about money ever again." Haley's eyes widened in shock. "Logan, that's incredibly generous, but I can't accept that. It's too much." Logan allowed a small smile to play on his lips. "I'm not offering this as a gift," he said smoothly. "I'm offering it as a deal." Haley's expression shifted to one of confusion. "A deal?" "Yes," Logan said, his tone steady. "Marry me." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and unexpected. Haley blinked, as if she hadn't heard him correctly. "What?" she whispered. "Marry me," Logan repeated, his voice firm. "It's a simple arrangement. You become my wife, and in return I'll take care of everything, your father's treatment, your financial struggles, all of it. You'll never have to worry again." Haley stared at him, her mind racing. "But why? Why would you want to marry me?" Logan leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Let's just say I need a wife for personal reasons. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. You get the help you need, and I get what I want." Haley's heart pounded in her chest. The offer was tempting, too tempting. She thought of her father, lying in a hospital bed, his life hanging by a thread. She thought of the sleepless nights, the endless worry, the crushing weight of responsibility. This could be the answer to all her prayers. But something about Logan's proposal felt off. There was a coldness in his eyes, a detachment that made her uneasy. "I don't know," she said hesitantly. "This feels wrong." Logan's jaw tightened, but he quickly masked his frustration with a reassuring smile. "I understand your hesitation," he said, "but think about it, Haley. This isn't about love or romance. It's about survival. You need help, and I'm offering it. All I ask in return is your cooperation." Haley looked down at her hands, her mind a whirlwind of doubt and desperation. She didn't trust Logan, not completely. But what choice did she have? Her father's life was at stake, and she couldn't bear the thought of losing him. After a long silence, she finally looked up at Logan, her voice barely above a whisper. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." Logan's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Good," he said, his tone almost triumphant. "You won't regret this." The wedding was a whirlwind. Logan spared no expense, ensuring the ceremony was a grand spectacle that would make headlines. Haley felt like a stranger in her own life, swept up in a world of luxury and excess that she didn't belong to. The dress, the flowers, the endless stream of guests, it was all too much. And through it all, Logan remained distant, his demeanor cool and composed. On their wedding night, Haley sat alone in the lavish bedroom of Logan's penthouse, staring out at the city lights. She felt like a prisoner in a gilded cage, trapped in a marriage that wasn't real. When Logan finally entered the room, she turned to face him, her heart pounding. He didn't say a word. Instead, he walked to the window, his back to her. The silence was suffocating. "Logan," Haley said softly, her voice trembling, "why did you really marry me?" Logan didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and distant. "It doesn't matter," he said. "What matters is that you're here now. That's all you need to know." Haley felt a pang of sadness in her chest. She didn't understand him, and she wasn't sure she ever would. But as she lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Logan St. James than he was willing to show. And Logan, lying awake on the other side of the bed, couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The days after the wedding were a blur of awkward silences and unspoken tension. Haley moved into Logan's penthouse, a sprawling space of glass and steel that felt more like a museum than a home. She tried to adjust to her new life, but the coldness of the place and of Logan made it impossible to feel at ease. He was polite, even courteous at times, but there was always a distance between them, an invisible wall she couldn't break through. Logan, on the other hand, was finding it harder than he expected to maintain that wall. He had thought this would be easy: marry Haley, keep her close, and slowly dismantle her life as part of his revenge. But the more time he spent around her, the more cracks began to form in his carefully constructed plan. It started with the little things: the way Haley would leave a cup of coffee on his desk in the morning, even though he never asked for it. The way she would quietly tidy up the living room after he left it in disarray, never complaining or making a fuss. The way she would sit by the window in the evenings, lost in thought, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the city lights. There was a quiet strength to her, a resilience that Logan hadn't expected, and it unsettled him. One evening, Logan came home late from work to find Haley in the kitchen. She was standing at the counter, her sleeves rolled up, carefully chopping vegetables. The smell of something warm and comforting filled the air, a stark contrast to the sterile atmosphere of the penthouse. "You're cooking?" Logan asked, his voice laced with surprise. Haley glanced up at him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I figured we both have to eat," she said simply, "and I didn't think you'd want takeout again." Logan hesitated, then stepped closer. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," Haley replied, her tone light. "But I wanted to." For a moment, Logan didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to this, someone doing something for him without expecting anything in return. It was unsettling. And yet, as he sat down at the table and tasted the meal Haley had prepared, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: warmth. Over the next few weeks, moments like these became more frequent. Haley, despite her initial discomfort, began to settle into her new role as Logan's wife. She wasn't trying to win him over or change him. She was simply being herself. And that, more than anything, was what began to chip away at Logan's defenses. But with that closeness came guilt. Logan found himself watching Haley when she wasn't looking, studying the way her brow furrowed in concentration as she read a book, or the way her laughter lit up the room when she spoke to her father on the phone. She was nothing like Robert Brooks. She was kind, selfless, and genuine in a way that Logan hadn't expected. And that realization made his plan feel wrong. One night, as they sat together in the living room, Haley turned to Logan with a hesitant smile. "Thank you," she said softly. Logan frowned. "For what?" "For helping my dad," Haley said. "I know this marriage isn't conventional, but you've done more for him than I could ever repay. It means a lot to me." Logan's chest tightened at her words. He wanted to tell her the truth, that his help wasn't out of kindness, but part of a calculated plan to destroy her, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he nodded, his jaw clenched, as he fought the growing sense of shame that gnawed at him. As Haley turned back to her book, Logan stared at her, his mind racing. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to hate her, to see her as nothing more than a pawn in his game. But now, As he sat there in the quiet of the penthouse, he couldn't deny the truth. He was starting to care for her. And that terrified him. Haley had always been a curious person. It wasn't in her nature to pry, but living with Logan, this enigmatic, distant man, left her with more questions than answers. He was kind in small, fleeting ways, but there was always something guarded about him, as if he were holding back a part of himself. She told herself it wasn't her place to dig deeper. After all, their marriage wasn't built on love or trust. It was an arrangement, nothing more. But one evening, while Logan was out at a late meeting, Haley stumbled upon something she wasn't meant to see. She had been looking for a pen in his office, a simple enough task. The room was immaculate, every surface polished, every item in its place. But as she opened one of the drawers in his desk, her hand brushed against a folder. It was thick, its edges worn, as if it had been handled many times. Something about it caught her attention, and before she could stop herself, she pulled it out. Her heart sank as she flipped through the pages. Inside were documents, emails, and handwritten notes, all detailing Logan's plan to ruin her. There were records of her father's financial troubles, medical reports, and even a timeline of events leading up to their marriage. Every detail of her life had been meticulously documented, analyzed, and used against her. And at the center of it all was Logan's cold, calculated goal: revenge. Haley's hands trembled as she read the words on the page. Her mind raced, piecing together the truth. This wasn't a marriage, it was a trap. Logan hadn't married her out of kindness or necessity. He had married her to destroy her, to punish her for sins she hadn't even committed. Tears blurred her vision as she slammed the folder shut and shoved it back into the drawer. Her chest felt tight, her breaths shallow. She had trusted him, even if only a little. She had let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, there was something real between them. But now, all of that was shattered. When Logan returned home later that night, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. Haley was sitting on the edge of the couch, her face pale, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She didn't look up when he entered the room. "Haley," he said cautiously, setting his briefcase down. "Is everything okay?" She finally looked at him, and the pain in her eyes hit him like a punch to the gut. "How long were you going to keep lying to me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Logan froze. "What are you talking about?" Haley stood, her movements sharp and unsteady. "Don't play dumb, Logan. I found the folder. I know everything." For a moment, Logan couldn't speak. His carefully constructed world was crumbling around him, and he didn't know how to stop it. "Haley, I can explain." "Explain?" she interrupted, her voice rising. "Explain what? That you married me just to get back at my father? That you've been using me this entire time? What could you possibly say to make this okay?" Logan took a step toward her, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he said quietly. "I didn't expect—" "You didn't expect what?" Haley snapped. "That I'd find out? That I'd figure out you've been lying to me since the day we met?" Logan's jaw tightened, his guilt and frustration warring within him. "I didn't expect to care about you," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Haley's breath caught, but she quickly shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You don't get to say that," she said, her voice breaking. "You don't get to pretend this is anything other than what it is. You used me, Logan. You used me, and I'll never forgive you for that." Before Logan could respond, Haley turned and walked out of the room. The sound of the bedroom door slamming echoed through the penthouse, leaving Logan standing alone in the silence. For the first time in years, Logan felt truly powerless. He had spent so long chasing revenge, so long convincing himself that it would bring him peace. But now, as he stood there with Haley's words ringing in his ears, he realized the truth. He had destroyed the one thing that could have saved him. The penthouse felt emptier than ever. Haley had locked herself in the guest bedroom, refusing to speak to Logan. Days passed in silence, each one heavier than the last. Logan tried to approach her, to explain, but every time he knocked on the door, her response was the same: Leave me alone." For the first time in his life, Logan St. James didn't know what to do. He had built his entire existence on control, on strategy, on always being one step ahead. But now, standing on the edge of losing Haley, he realized he had no plan for this. No strategy could undo the damage he had caused. Haley, meanwhile, was a storm of emotions. Anger, betrayal, sadness, they all swirled inside her, leaving her exhausted and broken. She couldn't look at Logan without seeing the lies, the manipulation, the cold calculation that had brought her into his life. And yet, there was a part of her, a small, fragile part that couldn't ignore the moments when he had been kind, when he had shown glimpses of something real. But how could she trust any of it now? One evening, as Haley sat by the window in the guest room staring out at the city lights, there was a soft knock on the door. She didn't respond, expecting Logan to leave as he always did. But this time, he didn't. "Ellie," Logan's voice came through the door, low and hesitant. "I know you don't want to see me, and I don't blame you, but I need you to know, I'm sorry." Haley's chest tightened, but she stayed silent. "I never meant for it to go this far," Logan continued. "When I started this, I was angry. I wanted revenge. I thought it would make me feel better, that it would fix everything. But I was wrong. I was so wrong." Haley closed her eyes, her hands gripping the edge of the windowsill. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," Logan said, his voice breaking slightly. "But I need you to know that somewhere along the way, everything changed. You changed me, and I don't want to lose you." The sincerity in his voice caught Haley off guard. She wanted to believe him, but the pain of his betrayal was still too fresh. She stayed where she was, her heart warring with her mind. When Logan finally walked away, Haley felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name. Was it regret, or was it the faintest flicker of hope? The next morning, Haley woke to find the penthouse eerily quiet. Logan was gone. On the kitchen counter there was a note in his neat handwriting. "I'll give you space, but I'll always be here if you need me." For the next few weeks, Logan kept his distance. He moved into a hotel, leaving Haley alone in the penthouse. But even from afar, he found ways to show her he cared. He arranged for her father to receive the best medical care, ensuring that every bill was paid without question. He sent groceries to the penthouse, always including her favorites. And when Haley's car broke down one morning, she found a new one waiting in the garage, the keys left on the counter with no note, no explanation. At first, Haley was angry. She didn't want his help, didn't want to feel indebted to him. But as the days turned into weeks, she began to see the truth in his actions. Logan wasn't trying to control her anymore. He wasn't trying to manipulate her. He was simply The turning point came one rainy afternoon. Haley was visiting her father at the hospital when she overheard two nurses talking in hushed tones. "Did you hear about the man who paid for Mr. Brooks's surgery?" one of them said. "Apparently he's been covering all the costs anonymously. Must be someone who really cares about him." Haley's heart sank. She knew exactly who it was. That evening, as she sat alone in the penthouse, she found herself thinking about Logan. About the man who had hurt her, yes, but also about the man who had stayed by her side when she needed him most. The man who, despite everything, had shown her a kind of love she hadn't expected. When Logan returned to the penthouse later that night, he was surprised to find Haley waiting for him in the living room. She looked nervous, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Hi," she said softly. Logan froze, unsure of what to say. "Hi," he replied cautiously. Haley took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said honestly. "Not yet. But I can see that you're trying, and I think that means something." Logan's chest tightened, a flicker of hope sparking in his heart. "I'll keep trying," he said quietly, "for as long as it takes." Haley nodded, her expression softening. Okay. It wasn't a reconciliation, not yet, but it was a start, and for the first time in a long time, Logan felt like there was a chance, however small, that he could make things right. The days that followed were tentative, like walking on thin ice. Haley and Logan began to coexist again, but the air between them was fragile, filled with unspoken words and lingering doubts. Logan didn't push her, he gave her space, letting her set the pace. For the first time in his life, he wasn't trying to control the outcome, he was simply waiting. Haley, meanwhile, found herself watching Logan in a new light. He was different now, quieter, softer. The sharp edges of his personality seemed to have dulled, replaced by a man who was trying, in his own imperfect way, to make amends. But the scars of his betrayal still lingered, and Haley wasn't sure if she could ever fully trust him again. The final test came unexpectedly. One afternoon, Haley received a call from the hospital. Her father's condition had taken a turn for the worse, and the doctors weren't sure if he would make it through the night. Panic gripped her as she rushed to the hospital, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what to do, who to turn to. And then, without thinking, she called Logan. He arrived within minutes, his face pale with concern. "What happened?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with worry. Haley's voice broke as she explained the situation. "They don't think he's going to make it," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what to do." Logan didn't hesitate. He took her hand in his grip firm and reassuring. "You don't have to do this alone," he said softly. "I'm here. Whatever you need, I'm here." For the next several hours, Logan stayed by Haley's side. He spoke to the doctors, made arrangements for additional specialists, and ensured that Haley had everything she needed. He didn't leave her for a moment, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of her emotions. When the worst of the crisis had passed and her father stabilized, Haley finally allowed herself to breathe. She sat in the hospital waiting room, exhausted but relieved, as Logan handed her a cup of coffee. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice hoarse from crying. Logan sat down beside her, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to thank me," he said. I wanted to be here for you." Haley looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time she saw the man he was trying to become. The man who had put aside his pride, his anger, and his need for control to be there for her when she needed him most. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. A few weeks later, Haley stood in the kitchen, watching as Logan carefully set the table for dinner. It was a simple meal, nothing like the extravagant dinners he used to arrange, but it felt more meaningful than anything she had experienced before. There was no pretense, no manipulation, just two people trying to rebuild something fragile and new. As they sat down to eat, Logan cleared his throat, his expression serious. "Haley," he began, "I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry. For everything. For the lies, for the pain I caused you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I'm not the same man I was when this started. You've changed me, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm worthy of your trust." Haley's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of hope. She reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "I don't know if I'll ever forget what happened," she said honestly, "but I can see that you're trying, and I think I'm ready to try too." Logan's breath caught, his grip on her hand tightening. "You mean that?" Haley nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. "I do." The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still wounds to heal, trust to rebuild, and a past to reconcile. But for the first time, Logan and Haley were facing the future together, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as two people willing to fight for something real. As they sat together in the quiet of the penthouse, the city lights twinkling outside the window, Haley leaned her head on Logan's shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. Logan wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He would do whatever it took to protect the woman he had once sought to destroy, because now, she wasn't just part of his plan, she was his everything. Thank you so much for watching this story on Emma's Stories. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt and inspiring tales. Your support means the world to us. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. See you in the next one. Evelyn Harper grew up in a sleepy town called Cloverfield, Oregon, where the biggest excitement was the annual Apple Festival. She's 25, with hazel eyes that sparkle with hope and a smile that hides the weight of her world. Her grandmother, Clara, raised her after her parents passed away. And now Clara's sick, her heart failing, the kind of illness that demands a surgery costing $80,000. Evelyn doesn't have that kind of money, not even close. She's a dreamer, sketching designs in notebooks, but life's kept her grounded, working odd jobs to scrape by. That is, until a desperate idea changes everything. Across the state line in Seattle, James Carter rules Carter Enterprises, a tech empire built by his grandfather, Henry. At 26, he's got sharp cheekbones, a voice that commands rooms, and a reputation for being untouchable. But there's a catch. Henry's will states James must marry before his 27th birthday, just months away, or lose the company to a board of greedy suits. James doesn't do love, doesn't believe in it, not after watching his parents' messy divorce. Marriage? It's a business deal to him, nothing more, so he turns to a discreet matchmaking agency, one that promises no strings, just a signature on a marriage certificate. Fate steps in when Evelyn stumbles across the same agency. They offer her a deal: marry a stranger, stay married for a year, and walk away with enough cash to save Clara. She hesitates, her fingers trembling over the contract, but the thought of losing her grandmother pushes her to sign. James does the same, miles away, both unaware of who's on the other end. They never meet, never see each other's faces, just exchange a few texts to coordinate the legal stuff. A quick trip to the courthouse, a proxy wedding, and it's done. Evelyn gets her money, James keeps his empire, and they plan to divorce when the year's up. Simple enough, or so they think. A few weeks later, Evelyn's in Seattle, her savings drained from Clara's medical bills, clutching a resume and a dream. She's landed an interview at Carter Enterprises, a long shot for a small-town girl with no fancy degree. The office towers over the city, all glass and steel, a world away from Cloverfield's dusty streets. She steps into the lobby, her floral dress a splash of color against the corporate grays, and immediately feels out of place. Employees whisper as she passes, their eyes cutting through her like knives. Leading the pack is Megan Brooks, a senior designer with a smirk sharp enough to draw blood. Who let the thrift store in? Megan sneers, her clique laughing behind manicured hands. Evelyn's cheeks burn, but she straightens her spine, determined to prove she belongs. Upstairs, James sits in his corner office, staring out at the Puget Sound, his phone buzzing with a text from his wife. She's complaining about her stingy husband again, how he barely checks in. He types back, "Mine's just as bad, always whining about money." He chuckles, a rare sound, then tosses the phone aside. His assistant, Nathan Reed, knocks, reminding him of the day's interviews. James barely listens, his mind on the clock ticking toward his inheritance deadline. Little does he know, the girl stepping into the elevator downstairs, the one clutching her sketchbook like a lifeline, is about to turn his world upside down. Here's where it all begins. Evelyn Harper, a small-town dreamer from Cloverfield, Oregon, with hazel eyes and a heart full of hope, and James Carter, the steely CEO of Carter Enterprises in Seattle, bound by a secret neither understands. She's fighting to save her grandmother. He's racing to secure his legacy, and a sham marriage ties them together in ways they can't yet see. This is a story of two strangers, a lie that starts it all, and a love waiting to break through the chaos. Evelyn Harper steps out of the elevator at Carter Enterprises, her palms sweaty, her floral dress wrinkled from the long bus ride from Portland. The Seattle office buzzes with sharp suits and sharper tongues, a far cry from Cloverfield's gentle pace. She's here for an internship, a chance to turn her sketches into something real, but the air feels thick with judgment. Megan Brooks spots her first, leaning against a desk, her designer heels clicking as she saunters over. "Well, look at this," Megan says, her voice dripping with mockery. "Did you wander in from a yard sale? We don't hire charity cases here." Her clique snickers, a pack of polished wolves circling their prey. Evelyn clutches her sketchbook tighter, her throat dry, but she forces a smile. "I'm here for the interview," she says, her voice steady despite the heat rising in her chest. The interview room is a glass box, all cold lines and gleaming surfaces. Evelyn sits across from a panel of stone-faced managers, her resume trembling in her hands. They fire questions like bullets. "No degree? No experience? Why should we take a chance on you?" She talks about her designs, her love for creating beauty from nothing, but their eyes glaze over. Upstairs, James Carter watches through a one-way window, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He's not supposed to be here, not for a lowly intern hire, but something about her file caught his eye. Maybe it's the desperation in her application letter, the raw honesty of it. He doesn't know yet that she's his wife, the one he texts complaints to about his mystery spouse. Back in the lobby, Evelyn's hired, barely. "Intern, bottom rung," the HR rep grunts, tossing her a badge. She's assigned to the design team, under Megan's thumb. Day one is brutal. Megan dumps a stack of busy work on her desk, coffee runs and filing, smirking as she says, "Don't get comfy, small town. You won't last a week." Evelyn bites her lip, her fingers itching to sketch, but she nods and gets to work. She's not here to fight, not yet. She's here for Clara, for the paycheck that'll keep her grandmother breathing. But the whispers follow her, cutting deeper each day. Thrift store trash, they call her. Loud enough to sting, quiet enough to dodge blame. Then comes the elevator moment. It's late, the office emptying out, and Evelyn's hauling a box of files when the doors slide open. Inside stands Mr. Dawson, the janitor, his hands shaky on his mop. The box slips from her grip, papers scattering, and he bends to help, his knees creaking. "Oh, you don't have to," she says, kneeling beside him. "Nonsense, miss," he replies, his voice warm. "Folks don't usually see me. Nice to be noticed." She smiles, real this time, and they chat as they gather the mess, his stories of old Seattle filling the air. James steps in just then, unnoticed, his eyes narrowing as he watches. He's used to people ignoring Dawson, stepping over him like he's invisible. Evelyn's kindness, her ease with the old man, it sticks with him, a flicker of something he can't name. That night, Evelyn collapses onto a rented cot in a cramped Seattle apartment, her phone lighting up with a text from her husband. She types, "Work was hell today. My boss is a jerk and everyone hates me." Across town, James lounges in his penthouse, the city skyline glittering beyond his window. His phone buzzes, and he reads her message, smirking as he replies, "Same here. My wife's a nag, always complaining." They vent back and forth, strangers bonded by frustration, never suspecting they're talking about each other. Evelyn laughs at his dry humor, a rare bright spot in her day, while James feels a tug of warmth he brushes off as nothing. Next morning, Megan ramps up the torment. She accidentally spills coffee on Evelyn's sketches, her apology dripping with fake sugar. "Oops, guess you'll have to start over," she says, her eyes gleaming. Evelyn salvages what she can, her hands shaking, but she doesn't snap. She's tougher than they think, forged by years of scraping by in Cloverfield. James catches the tail end of it, striding past on his way to a meeting. "Enough," he barks, his voice low but lethal. Megan freezes, her smirk fading, and Evelyn looks up, startled. He doesn't meet her gaze, just keeps walking, but the air shifts. She doesn't know why he stepped in, doesn't know he's starting to see her. Days turn to weeks, and Evelyn carves out a space, small but hers. She stays late refining designs, proving her worth one pencil stroke at a time. James watches from afar, his texts with his wife growing longer, more personal. He doesn't admit it, not even to himself, but she's creeping under his skin. Evelyn, meanwhile, clings to her mystery husband's words, a lifeline in this cold corporate sea, their two souls circling each other, blind to the truth, their lives tangled in ways they can't yet untangle. Evelyn Harper's days at Carter Enterprises settle into a grueling rhythm, her desk a fortress of papers and half-finished sketches. She's been an intern for 2 months now, her hands stained with graphite, her spirit bruised but unbroken. Megan Brooks keeps the pressure on, her taunts sharper with every passing week. "Still here, small town," Megan says one morning, tossing a stack of revisions onto Evelyn's desk. "Guess you're too stubborn to quit." Evelyn grits her teeth, nodding silently, her focus on a design project that could change everything. It's a pitch for a new app interface, sleek and intuitive, something she's poured her soul into. She stays late, the office lights dimming around her, determined to make it perfect. The day of the pitch arrives, a Friday afternoon in the conference room, all glass walls and polished oak. Evelyn stands at the front, her floral dress swapped for a borrowed blazer, her voice steady as she unveils her work. "It's about connection," she says, clicking through slides of soft blues and flowing lines. "Making tech feel human." The managers lean forward, nodding, a rare flicker of approval in their eyes. James Carter sits at the head of the table, his face a mask, but his fingers tap the armrest, a tell he doesn't notice. When she finishes, the room claps, a sound that echoes in her chest. "Good work, Harper," one manager says, and Evelyn's heart leaps. Megan's smile tightens, her nails digging into her palms. Word spreads fast. By Monday, Evelyn's the talk of the floor, her design slated for development. Megan corners her in the break room, her voice low and venomous. "Think you're special now? You're nothing but a fluke." She shoves past, leaving Evelyn rattled but resolute. That night, Evelyn texts her husband, her fingers flying over the keys. "Finally did something right at work. Maybe I'm not a total failure." James, sprawled on his leather couch, reads it and replies, "Told you you're better than you think." "My day was a mess, though. Too many idiots." She smiles at his gruff tone, a warmth blooming she can't explain. James starts finding excuses to linger near Evelyn's desk, dropping off files himself instead of sending Nathan. He catches her humming once, a soft tune from Cloverfield, and it sticks with him all day. He doesn't know why he's drawn to her, why her quiet strength pulls at him. Meanwhile, a new player enters the game. Lydia Pierce strides into his office unannounced, her heels clicking, her perfume sharp. "Hello, husband," she purrs, tossing a fake marriage certificate on his desk. She's the woman he thought he married, the agency's pick, and now she's back demanding $3 million to keep up the charade. "You need me to secure your inheritance," she says, her eyes cold. James clenches his jaw, torn between paying her off and digging deeper. The tension spikes during a business trip to San Francisco, a client meeting James insists Evelyn join. They're side by side in a sleek boardroom, her notes meticulous, his presence commanding. After, the team heads to a rooftop bar, the city lights sprawling below. Evelyn sips water, keeping her distance, but Megan's there, her smile too wide. She slips something into James's drink when he's not looking, a favor for Lydia, who promised her a cut. James downs it, his head spinning minutes later. Evelyn notices first, his words slurring as he grips the railing. "You okay?" she asks, her hand on his arm. He shakes his head, the world tilting, and she pulls him aside, panic rising. It gets worse. James stumbles, his knees buckling, and Evelyn catches him, her small frame straining under his weight. "Stay with me," she says, her voice firm, guiding him to a cab. The driver speeds them to a hotel, the nearest safe place, but James is fading fast. In the room, Evelyn's hands shake as she dials Nathan. "Something's wrong with him," she says, her breath hitching. Nathan's voice crackles through. "I'm on my way, keep him awake." She splashes water on James's face, his eyes fluttering open. "Evelyn?" he mumbles, his hand brushing hers, a spark neither expects. She freezes, her heart racing. then pulls back as Nathan bursts in. The hospital's a blur of white walls and beeping machines. James is stable. The doctor's muttering about a sedative, too much in his system. Evelyn sits by his bed, her sketchbook forgotten, her eyes fixed on his sleeping form. Nathan arrives, his face grim. "Someone spiked him," he says. "Megan was there. Lydia's been calling." Evelyn's stomach drops, the pieces clicking together. James stirs, his voice rough. "Harper, you still here?" She nods, her throat tight. "Couldn't leave you like that." He looks at her, really looks, and something shifts, a crack in his icy walls. Back in Seattle, rumors fly. Megan spins a tale, whispering to the team that Evelyn's chasing James, a gold digger after the CEO. "She's shameless," Megan says, her clique nodding. Evelyn overhears, her fists clenching, but she keeps her head down. James, recovered, storms into the office, his eyes dark. "Who saw what happened?" he demands, his voice cutting through the chatter. No one answers, but he knows. He texts his wife that night, works a circus. "Someone tried to take me down." Evelyn, curled up in her tiny apartment, replies, "Same here, people suck." Their words weave a thread neither sees, pulling them closer, step by secret step. Evelyn Harper's rise at Carter Enterprises hits a jagged edge. Her app design's a hit, earning her a permanent spot on the team, but the victory's bitter. Megan Brooks watches from her corner office, her jealousy a living thing, twisting her smile into something feral. She spent years clawing her way up, and now this small-town nobody's stealing her spotlight. She meets Lydia Pierce in a dim Seattle bar, the air thick with cigarette smoke. "He's protecting her," Megan hisses, swirling her drink. "James won't let her go." Lydia leans in, her voice smooth as silk. "Then we make her disappear. I'll pay you double." Megan nods, her eyes glinting, a plan forming like a storm cloud. Evelyn's oblivious, her days a blur of work and late-night texts with her husband. She's at her desk one afternoon sketching when Megan saunters over. "Need you to run an errand," she says, handing over an address scribbled on a napkin. "Client pickup near Tacoma, now." Evelyn hesitates, the address odd, an industrial zone. But she grabs her coat. It's a trap, and she walks right into it. The warehouse looms, rusted and empty, the air cold as she steps inside. A shadow moves, then another, and before she can scream, hands grab her, rough and unrelenting. Megan steps out, her smirk cruel. "Thought you could take him from me?" she says, her voice echoing off the walls. They drag Evelyn to a basement, her wrists bound, her heart pounding. Megan circles her, a predator with prey. "James was mine first," she spits. "I saw him years ago, helped him when no one else did. You don't deserve him." Evelyn struggles, her voice hoarse. "I don't even want him like that." Megan laughs, sharp and unhinged, then swings a metal pipe. It catches Evelyn's side, a sickening thud, and she crumples, pain exploding through her. Blood seeps through her shirt, her vision blurring. But she fights to stay conscious, Clara's face flashing in her mind. James Carter's in his office when his phone buzzes, a text from Evelyn, short and strange. "Heading to Tacoma. Back soon." He frowns, unease prickling his spine. Hours pass, no word, and he calls Nathan Reed. "Find her," he orders, his voice tight. Nathan digs, tracing her phone to a dead signal near Tacoma's old docks. James grabs his keys, the drive a haze of speed and dread. He reaches the warehouse, its silence eerie, and hears a muffled cry from below. He descends, his footsteps loud in the dark, and finds her, slumped against a wall, Megan looming over her with that pipe raised again. "Stop," James roars, lunging forward. Megan swings at him, but he dodges, tackling her to the ground. She thrashes, clawing at him, her screams wild. "She's ruining everything!" He pins her, his breath ragged, until Nathan bursts in with security, cuffing her as she spits curses. James turns to Evelyn, her face pale, her eyes half open. "Hang on," he says, lifting her gently, her blood staining his shirt. The ambulance ride is a nightmare, sirens wailing, her hand limp in his. At the hospital, doctors swarm, their words a blur until one pulls him aside. She's stable, but there's something else, the doctor says, his voice low. She lost a pregnancy, 2 months along. Did you know? James freezes, the air sucked from his lungs. Pregnant? He didn't know, couldn't have, and neither did she. Guilt crashes over him, heavy and cold. He sits by her bed, her breathing shallow, and whispers, "I'm sorry," though she can't hear. When she wakes, her eyes search his, confused. "What happened?" she asks, her voice weak. He hesitates, the truth a weight he can't unload yet. "Megan attacked you. You're safe now," he says, his hand brushing hers. She nods, too tired to press, and he vows to keep the loss buried, at least for now. Back at Carter Enterprises, Nathan uncovers Lydia's role. "She paid Megan," he says, handing James a bank record. "And there's more. Your marriage to her, never legal. Paperwork glitch years back." James's jaw tightens, his mind reeling. If Lydia's not his wife, then who is? He texts his wife, needing her steady words. "Rough day, someone got hurt. My fault," he types. Evelyn, propped up in her hospital bed, reads it and replies, "Not your fault, people are crazy. I got hurt too." Their messages intertwine, a lifeline in the chaos, neither knowing they're comforting each other. Megan's hauled off, ranting about James, her obsession laid bare. Lydia vanishes, her phone dead, but James doesn't care. He's at Evelyn's side when she's discharged, driving her home to her tiny apartment. "You didn't have to," she says, her voice soft. "Yeah, I did," he replies, his eyes on her, dark with something new. She feels it too, a pull she can't name, but the shadows of that basement linger, and so does a truth he's hiding. They're closer than ever, yet miles apart, the secret of their bond ticking like a bomb. Evelyn Harper limps out of the hospital, her side aching, her spirit frayed but intact. James Carter drives her back to her Seattle apartment, the silence between them thick with unspoken words. He walks her to the door, his hand hovering near her elbow, ready to catch her if she stumbles. "Rest up," he says, his voice rough. "Call if you need anything." She nods, her hazel eyes meeting his, a flicker of gratitude there. He lingers a moment, then turns away, the weight of her attack and that hidden loss pressing on his chest. Evelyn watches him go, confused by the warmth she feels, a thread pulling her toward him, she can't untangle. At Carter Enterprises, James buries himself in work, his office a fortress of glass and steel. Nathan Reed knocks, his face tense, a folder in hand. "Got something big," Nathan says, sliding it across the desk. James flips it open, his eyes scanning the pages. "Lydia Pierce isn't your wife," Nathan explains. "The agency messed up the filing 3 years ago. Marriage never registered." James leans back, his mind racing. "Then who is?" he asks, his voice low. Nathan hesitates, then drops the bomb. "Evelyn Harper. Her name's on the real certificate, signed the same day as yours." James stares, the air gone still. Evelyn? His intern? His savior? His wife? Across town, Evelyn recovers at home, a cramped Portland rental she shares with her grandmother, Clara. She's on the couch, a blanket over her knees, her phone buzzing with a text from her husband. "Feeling lost today," it reads. "You okay?" She smiles faintly, typing back, "Rough week, got hurt, but I'm healing." Clara shuffles in, her gray hair tied back, a tray of tea in her hands. "Who's that mystery man you're always texting?" she teases, setting it down. Evelyn shrugs. "Just my husband, the fake one." Clara chuckles, then nods at a black credit card on the table. "Found that in your bag. Fancy. Who gave it to you?" Evelyn picks it up, her brow furrowing. "James, my boss, said it was for emergencies." She stares at the card, its sleek surface catching the light, and a memory clicks. Months ago, her husband sent her a card just like this, a lifeline when Clara's bills piled up. She grabs her phone, her hands trembling, and dials the number she's texted 100 times. It rings, and upstairs James's phone lights up, the same number flashing on his screen. He answers, his voice cautious. Hello? Evelyn freezes, her breath catching. James? She says, her voice a whisper. He goes silent, then, Evelyn? The line crackles with realization, a bridge snapping into place. Clara watches, her eyes wide. What's going on, honey? Evelyn drops the phone, her mind spinning. He's my husband, she says, the words tumbling out. James Carter, my boss, the guy I've been texting is him. Clara blinks, then laughs a hearty sound. Well, I'll be. That boy who drove you home? Your stingy husband's the big shot? Evelyn nods, dazed, piecing it together. The late-night rants, the shared frustrations, the comfort they found in each other, all with the man she's worked beside for months. She grabs the card again, its weight suddenly heavy, proof of a bond she never saw. James paces his penthouse, the city skyline a blur beyond his window. Nathan's words echo. Evelyn Harper, his wife. He remembers her in that elevator with Dawson, her quiet strength in San Francisco, her hand on his in the hospital. It fits too perfectly, and yet it terrifies him. He texts her, testing the waters. Need to talk. Can we meet? Her reply comes fast. Yes, tomorrow, my place. He exhales, his heart pounding, a mix of dread and hope he can't shake. Next morning, James arrives at Evelyn's door, his suit traded for a sweater, his guard down. Clara opens it, her grin sly. So, you're the husband who never visits, she says, ushering him in. Evelyn stands in the living room, her arms crossed, her eyes wary. Is it true? She asks, her voice steady. You're him? James nods, stepping closer. Yeah. I didn't know either. The agency screwed us both. She searches his face, then softens. All those texts, that was you? He smiles, faint but real. Every word. They sit, the air thick with questions. Why didn't we meet? She asks. I wanted it quick, clean, he says. Thought you did too, she nods. I needed the money for Clara. Didn't care who you were. A beat passes, then she frowns. But now? I can't be the other woman, James. Not if you're still married. He leans forward, his voice firm. I'm not. Lydia was a lie. You're the only one. Her breath catches, her heart tripping over itself. She wants to believe him, wants to feel this pull, but fear holds her back. A shadow of doubt she can't shake yet. Evelyn Harper stands in her Portland living room, the rain tapping against the windows, her heart a tangle of hope and hesitation. James Carter faces her, his sweater damp from the downpour outside, his eyes locked on hers. I love you, he says, the words raw, spilling out like they've been trapped too long. I didn't know it was you, Evelyn, but it's always been you. She stares, her breath shallow, the weight of his confession crashing over her. You're married, she whispers, stepping back. We both are, he shakes his head, closing the gap. No, mine was fake, a deal to keep my grandfather happy. Henry's will forced me into it. I don't even remember her face. What about you? Evelyn's hands tremble, her voice soft. Same, a contract to save Clara. We met once, signed the papers, and that was it. She looks up, a spark igniting. So we're both free? James nods, a half smile breaking through. Almost. 3 days and the divorce papers clear, then it's just us. She wants to believe him, wants to leap, but the scars from Tacoma linger, and she hesitates. I need time, she says, turning away. He nods, respecting her space, and leaves, the rain swallowing his footsteps. Back in Seattle, chaos erupts at Carter Enterprises. Lydia Pierce storms into James's office, her smile a blade. You can't ditch me, she says, slamming a forged document down. I'll take half your company if you try. James stands, his voice ice. You're nothing to me. That marriage never existed. She laughs cold and sharp. Tell that to Henry. He'll believe me. She's right. James knows it. His grandfather's old school, easily swayed by tears and lies. He calls Nathan Reed. Get her out, he says, his tone lethal. Nathan escorts her, but Lydia's already dialing Henry, planting seeds of doubt. That night, James drives to Evelyn's, the rain heavier now, his resolve steel. He knocks and Clara lets him in, her eyes twinkling. "Fix this, boy," she says, nodding toward Evelyn on the couch. He kneels before her, rain dripping from his hair. "I meant it," he says. "You're my wife, my real one, and I'm done pretending otherwise." Evelyn's eyes well up, her voice breaking. "I love you too. I just didn't know how to say it." They lean in, their foreheads touching, the world fading until a crash shatters the moment. The window splinters, glass raining down, and Megan Brooks steps through, her eyes wild, a knife in hand. "You don't get him," Megan screams, lunging at Evelyn. James pulls her back, his arm shielding her as Megan swings. "She's nothing," Megan shrieks, her voice cracking. "I saved you years ago, James, from that drunk on the street." "Me?" He freezes, a memory flickering. A girl, a scuffle, a kind act he'd forgotten. "That was you," he says, stunned. She nods, tears mixing with rain. "I loved you then. I love you now." Evelyn grips his hand, her voice steady. "Let her go, James. She's lost." He nods, pinning Megan until Nathan bursts in with police, their lights flashing through the storm. She's cuffed, sobbing, her obsession dragging her away. Henry Carter arrives next, his cane tapping, Lydia at his side. "What's this nonsense?" he growls, eyeing James. Lydia smirks. "He's abandoning me, Henry. Your grandson's a liar." James steps forward, Evelyn at his side. "She's the liar," he says, handing over Nathan's folder. "No marriage, just fraud." Henry scans it, his face hardening, then turns to Lydia. "Out," he barks. "And don't come near my family again." She stumbles back, defeated, her heels clicking as she flees. Henry looks at Evelyn, his gruff voice softening. "You're the real one, eh? Good. Keep him in line." He winks, then heads out, leaving them alone. James turns to Evelyn, the rain slowing outside. 3 days, he says, his hand finding hers. Then no more secrets. She smiles, her hazel eyes bright. "No more running," she replies, pulling him close. They kiss, soft at first, then fierce, the storm a witness to a love forged in chaos. Megan's gone, Lydia's exposed, and Henry's blessing seals it. They're not just husband and wife by paper now, but by choice, their hearts finally aligned. Evelyn Harper wakes in her Portland apartment, the morning sun spilling through the curtains, soft and golden. The chaos of the past days feels like a distant echo, the rain replaced by a quiet calm. James Carter sleeps beside her, his arm draped over her waist, his breathing steady. She traces his face with her eyes, the sharp lines softened in rest, and marvels at how they got here. 3 days have passed since that stormy night, since Megan's arrest and Lydia's downfall. The divorce papers, a formality now, cleared yesterday, leaving them free, truly free, to choose each other. She slips out of bed, her bare feet padding to the kitchen, a smile tugging at her lips. Claire's already up, stirring oatmeal at the stove, her gray hair catching the light. "Morning, honey," she says, glancing over. "Your man still out?" Evelyn nods, leaning against the counter. "He's exhausted, been a wild week." Clara chuckles, spooning breakfast into bowls. "Wild's an understatement. That boy jumped through hell for you." "Good catch." Evelyn blushes, her heart swelling. "He did, didn't he?" She sets the table, the clink of dishes a gentle rhythm, and Clara sits, her eyes sharp. "So, you two sticking it out? No more fake marriage nonsense?" Evelyn smiles, firm. "No more fakes. It's real now." James stirs, joining them, his hair mussed, his sweater swapped for a borrowed tee. "Smells good," he says, kissing Evelyn's cheek before sitting. Clara slides him a bowl, her grin sly. "Better treat her right, Mr. CEO. I want great-grandkids someday." He laughs, a rare, full sound, and nods. "Working on it, Clara." They eat, the room warm with chatter, Clara teasing James about his city ways, Evelyn laughing at his flustered replies. It's simple, this moment, but it's everything. A family stitched together from broken threads. Back at Carter Enterprises, Evelyn's design launches, the app a hit across Seattle. She's no intern now, but a designer, her name on the project, her sketches brought to life. James watches her present at a team meeting, her confidence quiet but unshakable, and feels a pride he can't voice. Megan's gone, locked away, her trial pending, and Lydia's vanish, her schemes dust. Henry Carter drops by, his cane tapping, his gruff voice praising Evelyn. "Knew you were a keeper," he says, clapping James's shoulder. "Don't mess this up, boy," James smirks. "Not planning to." That evening, James takes Evelyn to the rooftop of his penthouse, the city sprawling below, lights twinkling like stars. He pulls a small box from his pocket, a necklace inside, silver with a tiny hazel gem to match her eyes. "For you," he says, fastening it around her neck. "A promise. No more secrets, no more running." She touches it, her throat tight, and looks up. "You didn't have to," he shrugs, his hands finding hers. "Wanted to. You're my home, Evelyn. Took me too long to see it." She steps closer, her voice soft. "You're mine too. From that first text, I think." They stand there, the wind gentle, the world theirs for a moment. She thinks of Cloverfield, of Clara's laughter, of the warehouse shadows that nearly broke her. He thinks of Henry's will, of the empire he almost lost, of the girl who saved him without knowing it. "We started as strangers," she says, her head on his chest. "Yeah," he replies, his arms tightening. "And now we're everything." They kiss, slow and sure, the necklace cool against her skin, a symbol of a love forged in fire. Months later, life settles into a new shape. Evelyn splits time between Portland and Seattle, her designs thriving, her heart full. James softens, his edges smoothed by her, his penthouse no longer a cold shell but a place they share. Clara visits, her health steady, her stories endless, and Henry joins them sometimes, grumbling about city traffic but smiling at Evelyn's sketches. They build something real, day by day, a future neither expected but both cherish. It began with a lie, a contract signed in haste, two souls tethered by chance. Evelyn, the dreamer from Cloverfield, and James, the king of Carter Enterprises, stumbled through secrets and storms to find each other. Now, as the sun sets over Seattle, they stand together, not just husband and wife by law, but by choice, their love a quiet triumph over every odd they've faced.